Excited to be here today. This is a class on shrink plastic, and my name is Kelly Wayman. I'm here at Silhouette headquarters. I've done a lot of these classes with Silhouette and Michaels, and I just really enjoy them. So ask questions in the chat if you have questions as we go along. I've got McKenna who will be feeding those questions to me, so I can answer them as we go. What we are doing today is this class of 2021 Keychain. So I actually have a senior in high school graduating this year. And so this, with the little coronavirus, I actually helped design this design that you can get in the design store. But I also have a couple of other ideas. So I want you to be able to learn in this class how to use the Silhouette clear shrink plastic. But if you like this design and maybe want to use it for something other than shrink plastic, I have got a little mug that also I used. Let's see, it's a little bit shiny. I've used a metallic vinyl for that mug. I've used that mug for the same design. And then up here, I have got where I've applied it on a t-shirt. So that is the Caesar Easy Patterns vinyl that I used to cut this same design and put it on the back of a t-shirt for my daughter as well. So you can see that this design, you know, the keychains are fun. I'm going to make a whole bunch so that my daughter can pass them out to her graduating senior friends. So if you don't have a senior, if the design itself isn't relevant to you, you still might want to watch because I'm going to show you how to use shrink plastic. Okay, so let's go over the tools and materials. You will need some type of Silhouette machine. So I'm going to use the Cameo 4, but this is a small enough project that you can use a portrait, you can use an older Cameo machine, whatever you've got. I'm just using a normal blade, nothing fancy. I'm using the Autoblade, but if you prefer a manual blade instead, you can use a manual blade. With this design with shrink plastic, this does require an inkjet printer, just because we're going to be doing a print and cut. And then we will use Silhouette clear shrink plastic, and we will use a heat tool. So this is an embossing heat tool that I've had for a lot of years, but they still sell heat tools that you can that will work. And so if you don't have a heat tool, you can also do shrink plastic in the oven, and the recommended temperature is 325 degrees. We'll also, because we're making a keychain, we've got keychain parts that I just grabbed from Michaels. And then you will need a pair of needle nose pliers. 2 pair is even better. And optional at the end, I'll show you how you can use a gold paint pen to add a little bit of a border on the outside, but that's totally optional. You'll need a heat-proof surface and some kind of weight to weigh down your heated shrink plastic. As soon as you take it out of the oven or turn off the heat gun, you need to weigh it down with something. And all I'm using is just a thick pad of paper. It's just a thick pad of 4x6 paper. It's small enough, but you know, just something big. You can use a block of wood, something to press down, and then a heat-proof surface. I'm just going to use a little silicone mat, and that's about it. So we will go ahead and go into the software. Okay, so to get the design, if you haven't already purchased this design, it is number 344948. If you're in Silhouette Studio, you can just click on this store tab, and it will open up the Silhouette Design Store. And this one is free this week. This is the free design of the week. You could even click here as it's flashing right in the middle of your page. You could go to deals and free designs, and that's going to show right here. You also could type in the number in the search bar up here, 344948. Those are all ways to get to this particular design this week. If you haven't already purchased it, you'll have the option over here that you can add it to your cart and purchase it. I've already purchased it, and so it is in my, well, purchased it, but it's free right now. It's already in my library. So I'm going to go back to Silhouette Studio and go to my library and see, I've already pulled it up, but you can see in this upper right corner, you can use the search bar again to type in that number 344948. I'm sure you could also, if you start typing class of, it's going to show up there also. The search button, the search bar, especially when you have a lot of designs, is really helpful in the library. So I've just double clicked that thumbnail in the library to open it up. And so now we need to set our page size to match the media that we're using. So over here on the right, I've got my page setup panel. If you don't see that, it's just this top upper right button here on the panels column. And so I want my machine set to Cameo. I want my cutting mat set to Cameo. And of course, if you're using a different machine, you would plug in what you're using and make sure that those are selected. And then media size, I want to go with letter. And I'm going to choose landscape orientation. I set it to letter size because I like to always have my media size set up to whatever I am cutting. And the shrink plastic sheets are letter size. So I know I had one question one time where someone asked if they use A4 as their common printing media, if they still use letter size. And the answer is yes, you do use letter size because that is the size of material that you'll be using with the shrink plastic. Okay, so now this is really big, so we need to resize it. And I have already got my dimensions that I know. You can use a corner handle to drag it, but I know exactly what my dimensions are. So up here on the quick access toolbar, I'm going to click this little lock button, and then I want to choose the width of 3.745 inches. And so that's going to resize that design exactly how I've already practiced it. Now, if you're using a different design and you're going to do shrink plastic, you need to be aware that the shrink plastic, when you heat it, it's going to shrink down to about 1/3 of its original size. So whatever you start with right here on your page, it's going to end up about 1/3 the size. And so if you're using some other design, I would suggest making it, about the size you want it to be as finished. And then you can go up to your scale button and say, okay, now scale it by 300%, and it'll bump it up to pretty close to what you need to have it as your full size for printing, and then it'll shrink back down to the size you wanted it. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if that doesn't make sense. Okay, so, but I know I want this at 3.745 inches wide. And since I had that lock button, it scales the height proportionately so I don't get any weird squashed or stretched shapes. Okay, so since we are printing, I want to recolor this. And so I'm going to go over to my fill panel. It's also up here in the upper left. You can also access colors here. Over here on the fill panel on the right, I'm going to pick a color that goes with my daughter's high school colors. And so they've got kind of a red burgundy color. And so that's what I'm choosing. And then another thing about shrink plastic is it will actually get darker as you heat it. So if you are like me and you don't like using tons of printer ink because it's expensive, you can actually reduce the transparency, and that's over here in the fill panel down towards the bottom. I'm just reducing the transparency, and if I put it down to like 34%, when I heat this up, it's going to get more of a vivid color back. And so you could leave it at its full darkness, or you can set it a little bit transparent and it'll get darker as you heat it. That's just kind of a fun tip for working with heat transfer, or sorry, with shrink plastic, but totally optional. Okay, so now I want an offset on this design. With shrink plastic, right now, this is all separate, and so those would all cut out separately, and I don't want to do that. I need a background for them. And so I'm going to go over here to my offset panel. So it's on the panel column over here on the right, about halfway down. It's a little star with an offset behind it. That's the offset panel. So I'm going to click the design to select it. And then I want to click the button for offset. And over here for distance, I'm actually going to plug in 0.25 inches and then click apply. So that is going to, let me zoom in just a little bit. So that has created an offset around my lettering. And so now I have something to support it when I print it and need to heat it. It has got these little tiny inner pieces, and we're not going to worry about that right now because we're going to add another shape that's going to fill those in. Okay, so I'm going to draw an oval shape. So over here on the left, I've got drawing tools, and I'm going to choose the draw an ellipse. So once I click on that, I can just drag to create an oval. And so I also know what size I want this. So I'm going to make it, I want to unlock it because I need to plug in exact dimensions for the width and height. So click this little unlock button, and the width is going to be 4.5 inches wide. And the height is going to be 2.8. I practiced with a few shapes to see what I liked best, and that's why I'm using these dimensions. You could totally do your own, whatever you wanted to choose for shapes, but you should have some kind of offset. All right, so I'm going to select all of those together, and if I use this quick access button for center, that's going to center everything together. But if I look at that, it feels out of balance. This oval looks a little bit too far to the right. So I'm going to click on the oval, and I'm just going to use my arrow keys, or if I hold shift and use my arrow keys, it'll move a little further than just moving an arrow key. So I'm just going to get that visually balanced. And I will have a little hole over here in a second. So we want to be able to use this for a key ring. And so I'm going to draw another circle. So grab this draw an ellipse tool again. And if I hold my shift key while I drag this out, it's going to keep a perfect circle. So I'm going to hold my shift key, and I want this to be 0.26 inches. So I got it close. I'm going to go back up, lock the scale aspect, and set it to 0.26. And that is going to change both of them at the same time because I have it locked. So that's my little keyhole, key ring hole. And now I just need to get this aligned again. That looks pretty good. And I'll make that sure that little circle works in a second. What I want to do now is select the offset that we created and the oval that we created. So I'm going to hold my shift key while I click the offset and the larger oval. And then I'm going to weld those. So I don't want anything else selected, just those two. And I clicked weld. So hopefully when you click weld, yours is going to look a lot like mine. And then this little circle, I want to make sure that it's aligned. And so I'm going to go up to my align options up in the quick access toolbar. And I want them to align in the middle. So kind of vertically get that set. And it looks like that is. And I might nudge this to the left just a little bit. That looks pretty good. And so now I want to turn this circle into a hole on the offset. So while that circle is selected, I'm going to hold my shift key and click on this other welded offset that we've got. And I'm going to right click and choose Make Compound Path. So hopefully I didn't lose anybody. What I did was I made this, by choosing Compound Path, I've made this circle into a hole. I could have grouped it, but you'll see later that I want it to actually be a hole. I want them to be all just one layer. Now I want to group this with the offset that we've created. So I don't want to move anything. I want to select all of it right now. And then I'm going to choose group. So I've got a little group button up here on the top, kind of in the middle, for group selected shapes. Or if you want the quick keystroke for group, you can do Control G if you're using Windows, or Command G if you're using a Mac. So now when I drag that around, it's all going to move together. Okay, so I'm going to click this button for Fit to Window so I can see my whole page again. And now I want 4 of these on my page. And I also want to turn on my registration marks. So you can actually just type your letter M on your keyboard, and that will turn on your registration marks. So M as in mark. If you just hit that, that's your toggle button for having your marks on and off, your registration marks. Okay, and since we have a landscape orientation, we're just going to make sure that when we send it to print that it also accepts a landscape orientation, but I'll make sure we do that again when we get to it. I want 4 on my page. So if I just select this design that I've got, if I hold my Control key or my Command key and just use my arrow button, that is going to make a duplicate right next to it. And if I select both of those again by creating a drag box, I'm going to, again, hold my Control key, Command if you're on a Mac, and hit my down arrow, and that makes a really fast duplicate. And so now all I need to do is just kind of make sure that they are spread out on the page so they're not touching, and I don't want anything within these crosshatch areas. I also want to make sure that it's completely within this cut border. If you're not seeing that inner red border line, down here on your page setup panel, that very bottom box is for show cut border. And I always use that when I'm doing a print and cut, so I make sure that I stay where I need to within the boundaries. Okay, so I'm just going to drag these around a little bit, make sure that I am not touching the crosshatch areas and that I stay within the cut borders. All right, so they can be pretty close. I just don't want them to be touching. All right, so do we have any questions? Have I lost anybody? Are we okay?
One question that somebody was wondering about is the cut lines are showing up as red. Is it possible to change the color of the cut lines? Or
yes. Yes, so if you want to change your cut lines, have what you want. Well, so 2 things. First of all, even if your cut lines are showing red, when you like recolored this class of 2021, those red lines will not print. So if you have them at their default, and up here you can see it's 0.0 point thickness, those cut lines, no matter what color they are, they're not going to show up when you print, as long as it is at this 0.0 thickness. You can do things to make them show up. Now, if you want those cut lines to be invisible, here, let me ungroup this. And I will zoom in. And so say I want to change this to like a gray color, and you can see those red cut lines are there. If you don't want those cut lines to show up at all, up here on your upper left on your quick access toolbar, on the very left, that was the fill color. And then this little rectangle next to it is the line color. So you've got a choice to make that invisible. So hopefully that answers.
Like, can you show how to make like the circle and the oval around it to show up not in red also? Just the cut line?
Yes, so anytime you want to change a line color, the fastest way is up here on your quick access toolbar. You can change it to whatever color you want. You can make it invisible. On this one, I wouldn't make it invisible because now you don't know where it's going to cut. It's not going to print, so I suggest having some kind of color so you can see where it's at. All right, I'm going to group that again, make sure I don't lose anything. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to print it and then we're going to cut it. So in the send panel, you could print it while you're in the design page, or you can print it from the send panel. I actually like to look here first in my send panel, just because once you print it, you shouldn't change the position of anything. It's okay if you turn cut lines on and off, but I kind of like to do that before I print it. So you can see right now, all of these bold lines are still around the original design. That means the machine thinks it should cut all of it, and we don't want to cut those inner pieces. So I'm going to drag a selection box around all of them. And once they are selected, over here on the right-hand side under carriage 1, I'm going to choose cut edge. And that basically means that any shapes that are overlapping, it's not going to cut any inner lines. And so it's only going to cut these outer lines. Now, remember I told you that instead of grouping this tiny little circle with the offset, I'd made it a compound path. This is why, because cut edge is just so much faster. If I got over here and I had grouped that circle instead of making it a compound path, that would make that inner circle disappear. But since it's all one layer as a compound path with this outside edge, my quick command of cut edge means it will cut that circle and the outside, but not those inner letters. So if you ever get to this point and you have things that you do or don't want to cut, you can always ungroup it and select them individually and choose over here, cut or cut edge or no cut, and get the same result. This is just the faster way to do it. Okay, so at this point, we would print it. So there's a little icon here for send to printer. And we would just want to make sure, so here's a preview, and you can see right here, you can tell that it is not going to print those outer cut lines. They're still there, but they're not going to print. So this is a great preview to let you see. So even if you had those line colors that you were worried about, you know, if they were red and you just didn't want to see them, you can't tell here because my fill color is red, but you would not see those cut lines. Hopefully that makes sense. So at this point, if it looks good, you would go to print, and then this will pull up your printer dialog, and you would go in, you know, it'll look different depending on your printer. But here's where you can choose your paper source, make sure your document size matches. We want it letter and we want it landscape, so that's right. And so this is kind of a double check and making sure that all of your design is going to print the way you think. So I don't have a printer here with me, and so I'm going to cancel out of all of this, but you would print yours. When you are printing the shrink plastic, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to me and not look at the, oh, wait. Sorry, one more thing. We do want the software. We need to set up our material settings. we don't want it to cut like it's cardstock. So we want the material to be shrink plastic. So that is already a default material. If you're using the Silhouette brand shrink plastic, you just click on the little drop-down box and scroll down until you find shrink plastic. Sorry, this always does this to me when I'm recording live. It doesn't want to keep scrolling the right way. Okay, so I found shrink plastic. And then the action should show cut. Your tool, so if you're using a Cameo 4 or Portrait 3, it'll detect what tool you have in your machine. I have my Autoblade in there. If you're using like a manual blade, you would set your manual blade to the setting you want before putting it in your machine. So with the shrink plastic, I'm not using the default. I'm actually bumping it up to a blade on 7. And if you've never cut shrink plastic before, you can cut a little test area. I would not use the default material, the default test cut, because it's going to get in the way of your registration marks. I would just choose a shape that's completely away from the rest of your design, but that you could test before you send the whole job through. But I'm using my blade on 7, my force on 33, my speed is 1, and I want 2 passes. So that's what works for me. So you can try that as you're testing it out, and then you can adjust as necessary based on your own machine and condition of your blade, whether it's old or new. You can adjust those a little bit. Okay, so now I am done with the software part. All I will need to do is press send once I'm ready. So let me show, let's see. I'm going to show you the shrink plastic. Okay, so this is the clear version. The white version is a little bit different, so I'm just showing you how to do the clear. There is a backing that's got the Silhouette logo on the back, and then there's kind of a frosted side, so that you want to make sure that when you load this into your printer, that it's going to print on the frosted side and not on this side with the logo showing. All right, so this is how it's going to print. You can see right now that it's pretty big, and then this is what it's going to look like once we've heated it up. And so we've got these registration marks. We just need to send that job to our printer or to our Cameo to get that cut out. So I will load it on the mat. Make sure that you always load it the way it shows in the software. So I've got my mat with the arrow pointing up, and we had this at a landscape orientation. And so just double check your software screen that you've got your square in the upper left of the mat, go all the way to the edge, and then you've got a registration mark here and a registration mark there. We'll press it down. Load it into the machine. So make sure you're always loading with the left edge of your mat lined up with this little load guideline. Just press the load button, and that is ready to go. So I will just click send in my software. So this is going to, right now it's reading the registration marks. It knows if you've got a print and cut. If you have your registration marks on, then it will always look for those registration marks before it cuts. And so once it registers those, it's going to, this is the Autoblade, so it's going to adjust itself. And now it's just going to cut. So this is going to take a few minutes. Do we have any questions?
Mm,
No,
not right now.
okay,
Yeah.
then let me give you some tips. So with this design, you can use different shapes. So I played around with some different shapes. So like I tried a rounded rectangle and just a regular oval, and I tried my offset at different different thicknesses of my offset. And what I decided was, when you're actually heating this with the heat gun, all right, let me put it down here. When you're heating this with the heat gun, or even in the oven, I tried it both ways, it does not shrink perfectly. And so kind of an organic offset is better. And so if I did a square, it ended up just a little bit skewed, and I didn't like that. So kind of an organic shape is better. This is clear shrink plastic. So it does have a frosted side. On the keychain, you can see it's got, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's got kind of a glossy side once you heat it up. There we go, catch the light, right? It's got a glossy side, but I didn't feel like with this large of a shape that it got a perfectly smooth glossy side. And so I opted to have the frosted side as my main design. But if you do want the glossy side to be your main design, I would just go with something smaller, you know, something that's smaller than that 4.5 by 3-ish inches that we did. And what you would need to do if you want your frosted side or your glossy side to be the main design, you would reverse your image before you print it. And like I said, you would not want to go really much bigger than this. It's kind of hard when it's heating to do it evenly. So you can go smaller than this to start with and get a little bit more consistent results. This one's pretty big, but I wanted this keychain this size and not tiny. If you're doing jewelry, obviously you could go smaller than that. I would not go bigger than this. I have tried bigger than this. And especially if you're doing a specific shape like a circle and you want it to look like a perfect circle, you're not probably going to get it with a shape this big. So smaller is better.
When you're printing the design, do you print it on the frosted side or the glossy side?
So as I mentioned, the frost or the clear shrink plastic has a frosted side and it has a backing. So really your only option is to print it on the frosted side. If you want the glossy side to be your main design, you would just do a mirror image, but still print on the frosted side. So you're never printing on the backing. Any other questions? Take a look at this. I think we're working on our 3rd out of 4. So maybe let me ask you if if any of you in our class have worked with shrink plastic before. Have you used the Silhouette shrink plastic? I guess I'm kind of curious if people have used it before or if this is totally new. No response. Okay.
Ellie says shrink plastic is fun to play with.
Okay. All right, so let's see. Have we asked where people are visiting from? Where are you from? Oh, they want to know about.
Down there, the shrinking rock funding.
Oh.
That's the same thing.
All right, so this is also shrink plastic. Was this a blog post or just shown on social media?
No, I think it's a blog post.
Okay, so if you're checking the Silhouette 101 blog, you'll probably see this project. But I mean, that's pretty cool. It looks just like a geode or whatever it's supposed to be. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with shrink plastic. And I've seen people doing, I think even window displays, because if you're using the clear, you can get the sun shining through it. Okay, so we are done with the computer. I'm going to move that out of the way so we can work with this. Okay, so we'll unload it. And I almost always these days flip my mat over and peel my mat away from my material. It's just easier and you don't get your material curling. All right, so this clear shrink plastic has this backing on it. So now the trick is to, oh, you know what I did? I forgot and I used my printout without changing to my saved document. So it cut based on the design that I just barely created. And this printout was one that I had saved and intended to cut from. So never change your, your design after you have printed it. So where is my backup? There we go. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I have a backup. I've already pulled a couple of these off. So it's got a sticky backing. So the backing itself is sticky. That's what holds it in place. But the design is not going to be sticky. So I have found that the easiest way is to kind of get this started. And it will tear if you're not careful while you're peeling this off. So I just get it started. And again, I just go and have found that it's pretty easy if I flip it over and peel the backing away from the shrink plastic. So go slowly because you don't want to tear it. So you can see that my settings were deep enough to cut completely through the shrink plastic itself, but not to cut through the backing. Now, if it did cut through the backing, that is totally fine. You just want to make sure that before you heat this up, that you take that backing off of it. So it'll have a clear side and it'll have a frosted side. Okay, and then I've got this little hole. I need to take that off. And so now we're ready to heat this up. So you would, especially with this size, even if you're using an oven, I would only do one at a time. I would only heat one at a time. So you've got control and you can flatten it as soon as you're done heating it. So I've got a heat-proof surface here. And I need something to keep it from blowing away. I've just got a little skewer here and my heat tool. And then I've got this paper pad, this small paper pad that as soon as I'm done heating it, I'm just going to press it against there to keep it from, or to flatten it out. So watch this. This is pretty fun. Yeah, shrink plastic is really fun. So watch this. So we'll heat it and it's going to start to curl. And if you're doing it in the oven, it's going to do the same thing. So it's going to kind of start curling up. I'm just keeping this skewer handy so it doesn't fly away. So right now it looks like a mess and it gets kind of scary at first. But as you keep heating it, it's actually going to start flattening out. So just keep heating it, let it do its curly thing. Okay, so that looks probably as flat as we're going to get it on its own. And so then as soon as I turn off the heat, I'm going to press my weight on it. Squash it. That's all you need to do.
Kelly, if you're doing it in the oven, how long do you put it in for?
So you need to be able to watch it. You're just watching it. It seems like when I've done it in the oven, it's only a couple minutes.
When you take it out, do you also have like paper pad handy to squish it?
Yes, same thing. When it comes out of the oven, you'll put it down on the hot pad or whatever and just press something down against it. If you let it go too long, it's not going to flatten out for you. Okay, so that looks good. And don't expect it to be perfect. The more you practice with it, you can probably get better at it. But like I said, if you're trying to get a perfect square or circle or something, go with a smaller shape that you've got a little more control. Because with the heat gun, you could see that with this big, large shape, I couldn't get it heated all at the same time. All right, so let's turn this into a keychain. So this has just got a little jump ring on it. Oh, actually, let me also show you with this gold paint pen. You don't have to do this, but it's kind of fun. Before you put the key ring on it, because it's harder once the key ring's on, just rub the paint pen along the edge. And you can't tell from far away, but when you're actually holding it and looking at it, you can see this pretty gold edge that shows up. Just a little extra detail. I always like adding details that don't take a lot of time, but add just a little extra something. So this is Deco Color premium paint pen, and I think Michael's sells them. They did have some like it. Okay, so now I've just got my jump ring on my keychain. And you, of course, could do this yourself with jump rings and chain and whatever you want. I like these that are already made. So if I just take my two needle nose pliers at the same time, open that enough to get that on there, and then twist it back. Not wearing my glasses, so can't see it perfectly. All right, so that is your keychain. And so you obviously you can do whatever design you want with your shrink plastic. Just be aware that, you know, it is a print and cut. So you're following all the same rules you do with any other print and cut, where you make sure you've got your registration marks on, you make sure you have cut lines, you make sure you've got something that has color to it. And we've got Silhouette 101. You can check print and cut and get a whole bunch of information on print and cut and other videos and helps and stuff. Do we have any other questions?
Somebody asked, what is the name of the pen?
Yes, so this pen the brand is Deco Color, and it's just premium. And I think if you just type in gold paint pen, like in the Michael's search bar, gold paint pen, it'll pull that up for you. Okay, any other questions? All right, just remember that you don't have to do shrink plastic. You don't have to do this design on shrink plastic. We've got these other fun designs with the class of 2021 with the little virus there to celebrate the crazy year. Yeah, so if we don't have any other questions, then thank you for joining us. Oh,
We have some.
oh.
Yeah,
I
we
think
have some
do have a
questions
couple
that came in.
questions.
Yeah. So someone said, how did you determine how far in to put the hole before shrinking?
So I was just eyeballing it. Let's see. You don't want it too close to the edge. I don't know if you can see that on the finished. Yeah. So you don't want it too close to the edge. You're kind of, well, you just have to keep in mind that this is going to shrink to a third of the size. And so with the finished one, that was plenty of room for the jump ring. You know, a smaller jump ring might not fit there. You could get it a little closer to the edge, but you're kind of just eyeballing it. So I can see the border that I created, and I'm just kind of keeping a similar border thickness. Hopefully that makes sense.
Then someone else asked if you can do a photo picture for this, or if you've ever done a photo with shrink plastic.
I believe you can, because you can print photographs in Silhouette Studio. So here's the packaging, and it's got like these floral prints, and you can see how that turned out nice. I'll bet you could use photographs.
One last question. Any recommendations on printers that print well with shrink paper?
So I have tried it with several brands of printers. It needs to be an inkjet printer. I've used Canon and I've used Epson. So your name brand, your main printers are all going to be fine. Probably HP also would work great. I've used all of those in the past with my Silhouette machines, and the Silhouette materials that are made for printable materials. So the one thing I guess I would say is you need a printer that has a rear document feeder, because if your only option is a paper cassette tray where it has to do this kind of U-turn thing, the shrink plastic is thicker, and I would not trust it in a printer that your only option is a U-turn. So when I'm looking for a printer, I always know I want to be able to use these various Silhouette printable materials, and so I always look for a printer that's got a rear feeder slot where it'll just feed it in straight through the back. So I guess that's what you're looking for an inkjet printer.
And that is all of our questions. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me. If you want to find the replay of this, you can go to michaels.com/classes. If you want to see upcoming classes with Michaels, it's michaels.com/online classes. And then you can also look at the Silhouette 101 blog, because we keep a blog post that's current with our upcoming classes. You can find me on Instagram with at Crafting Kelly with a K. And again, my name is Kelly Wayment. My blog is findingtimetocreate.com. And I hope to see you at more classes. Thanks for joining me.